The crackling of a gentle fireplace fills the air as we begin our journey into the medieval world, a time when food was not just sustenance, but a complex tapestry of survival, creativity, and social structure. Picture yourself settling into a comfortable chair beside this warm hearth, the soft glow casting dancing shadows on ancient stone walls that have witnessed centuries of human stories. Medieval Europe, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th centuries, was a world vastly different from our own. The concept of what we might call junk food today existed in fascinating forms that would surprise modern minds. But before we explore these culinary curiosities, let us first understand the world that created them. The medieval kitchen was the heart of any household, whether in a grand castle or a humble peasant cottage. These kitchens were smoky, warm spaces where enormous fireplaces dominated entire walls. The fire never truly died. It was banked at night and rekindled each morning, creating a continuous cycle of warmth and cooking that lasted throughout the seasons. The smell of wood smoke, herbs, and slowly cooking food permeated everything, creating an atmosphere that was both comforting and practical. In castle kitchens, massive stone hearths could accommodate entire animals on spits, while smaller fireplaces handled everyday cooking. Iron pots hung from adjustable chains, allowing cooks to raise or lower them depending on the heat needed. The floor was typically stone or hard-packed earth, covered with rushes that absorbed spills and provided a softer surface for the endless standing that kitchen work required. The people who worked in these kitchens lived lives governed by the rhythm of meals and seasons. The head cook in a noble household held significant authority, responsible not just for feeding the family, but for managing stores, planning elaborate feasts, and ensuring that food reflected the status and wealth of the household. Below the head, cook worked a hierarchy of kitchen servants, from scullery maids who scrubbed pots and hauled water, to specialized servants who managed specific tasks like tending the fire or preparing particular dishes. Water was a constant concern in medieval kitchens. Unlike today, where we simply turn a tap, medieval cooks had to plan for water needs carefully. Wells, streams, or cisterns provided water that was often carried by hand in heavy buckets. This precious resource was used sparingly and efficiently, with washing water often reused for multiple purposes before being discarded. The tools of the medieval kitchen were simple but effective, crafted by local blacksmiths and woodworkers. Iron knives with wooden handles, wooden spoons of various sizes, clay pots, iron cauldrons, and woven baskets filled the kitchen space. Each tool was valued and cared for, as replacement was expensive and time-consuming. A good iron pot might serve a family for generations, passed down as a valuable inheritance. Lighting in these kitchens came primarily from the fire itself, supplemented by candles made from animal fat or rushes dipped in tallow. The flickering light created an atmosphere of warmth and intimacy, but also made detailed work challenging, especially during the shorter days of winter. Kitchen workers learned to accomplish complex tasks by feel and experience, their hands guiding them through familiar motions, even in dim light. The social structure of medieval society was reflected in its kitchens and eating habits. The wealthy ate elaborate meals with multiple courses, exotic spices, and complex preparations, while peasants made do with simple, hearty fare based on whatever they could grow, gather, or afford. Yet both rich and poor shared certain fundamental approaches to food: the need to preserve it for lean times, the celebration of abundance during harvest seasons, and the understanding that food was never to be wasted. Seasonal availability dominated medieval cooking in ways that modern people can barely imagine. There were no grocery stores stocked with foods from around the world, no refrigeration to extend the life of perishables, and no global transportation networks to bring exotic ingredients to remote locations. Instead, medieval cooks worked with what grew nearby, what could be preserved through various techniques, and what could be obtained through trade during brief market seasons. Spring brought fresh greens and early vegetables, a welcome relief after the stored foods of winter. Summer meant abundance, fresh fruits, vegetables, and the opportunity to dry and preserve foods for the coming cold months. Autumn was the season of harvest festivals and intensive food preservation, while winter meant relying on stores of grain, preserved meats, dried fruits, and root vegetables stored in cellars and granaries. The medieval understanding of nutrition was quite different from our modern scientific knowledge, yet it was based on centuries of practical experience and observation. They recognized that certain foods provided energy for heavy labor, that others helped maintain health during illness, and that variety in diet, when possible, contributed to overall well being. Their approach to what we might call comfort foods was deeply tied to both physical and emotional needs. Herbs and spices played crucial roles in medieval cooking, not just for flavor, but for their perceived medicinal properties. A medieval cook was part chef, part healer, understanding which herbs could aid digestion, which might help with illness, and which combinations created not just delicious, but healthful meals. Gardens were carefully planned to provide both culinary and medicinal plants, with knowledge of their uses passed down through generations of women who managed household food preparation. The concept of meals themselves was different in medieval times. Rather than our modern three-meal structure, medieval people often ate two main meals: a morning meal and a larger afternoon meal, with smaller amounts of food available throughout the day as needed. The timing and content of these meals varied greatly depending on social class, occupation, and season, but the general pattern created a rhythm of daily life that revolved around communal eating and shared food preparation. As we settle deeper into our comfortable position by the fireplace, listening to the gentle crackle of burning wood, we can imagine ourselves transported to one of these medieval kitchens. The warmth of the fire, the mingled scents of cooking food and wood smoke, the soft sounds of food being prepared, and the sense of community that centered around these hearths create a perfect backdrop for our journey into the fascinating world of medieval food culture. The morning mist clings to cobblestone streets as we make our way through the narrow lanes of a medieval town, heading toward the bustling marketplace where the day's food adventures begin. The fireplace beside us continues its gentle crackling, creating a soothing backdrop as we imagine stepping into this vibrant world of medieval commerce and culinary discovery. Medieval marketplaces were extraordinary sensory experiences, nothing like the sterile, organized supermarkets of today. Picture arriving at the market square just as the sun breaks through the morning clouds, casting long shadows between the wooden stalls and temporary structures that merchants have assembled before dawn. The air is filled with a complex mixture of aromas: fresh bread from the baker's stall, the earthy smell of root vegetables, the pungent scent of cheese, and the less pleasant but equally authentic odors of animals and unwashed bodies in an age before modern hygiene. The sounds of the marketplace create a symphony of medieval life. Merchants call out their wares in voices trained to carry across the crowded square. Fresh fish from the river, shouts one vendor, while another proclaims the quality of his grain. Wooden wheels creak as carts loaded with produce navigate the uneven streets. Chickens cluck from wicker cages, pigs grunt from temporary pens, and the constant murmur of conversations in various regional dialects creates a background hum of human activity. As we move through this medieval marketplace, we begin to understand how different the concept of fast food or junk food was in this era. While medieval people didn't have processed snacks wrapped in colorful packages, they certainly had their own versions of quick, portable, and not particularly nutritious foods that served similar purposes to what we might call junk food today. Street vendors offered various forms of quick sustenance to busy market goers, travelers, and workers who needed to eat on the go. Meat pies were perhaps the most popular of these early fast foods. These weren't the refined pastries we might imagine, but rather rough, thick crusted pies filled with whatever meat was available, often scraps and less desirable cuts, mixed with heavy seasonings to mask any questionable flavors. The crusts were frequently so hard and thick, they served more as edible containers than as part of the meal itself. Ale was another staple of medieval junk food culture, though calling it junk might be unfair since it was often safer to drink than water. However, the quality varied enormously, and cheap ale sold at markets was frequently watery, poorly brewed, and sometimes contaminated. Yet people drank it throughout the day, including children, because it provided calories and was generally safer than questionable water sources. The bread available at medieval markets tells us much about the social stratification of the time. White bread, made from finely ground wheat flour, was expensive and reserved for the wealthy. The common people ate darker breads, made from rye, barley, oats, or mixtures of whatever grains were available and affordable. The cheapest breads were often made from flour mixed with sawdust, bean flour, or other fillers that provided bulk but little nutrition. These filler breads were the medieval equivalent of highly processed foods, cheap, filling, but not particularly healthful. Sausages were another form of medieval convenience food, and like many preserved foods of the Iota era, they were often made from questionable ingredients. Medieval sausage makers used every part of the animal, mixing scraps, organs, blood, and fat with grain fillers and heavy spices. The spices served multiple purposes. They added flavor, helped preserve the meat, and masked the taste of ingredients that might not be entirely fresh. These sausages were portable, required no cooking, and provided quick energy for laborers and travelers. Cheese in medieval markets ranged from excellent quality products made by skilled artisans to cheap, quick aged varieties that were more about preservation and calories than flavor. The cheapest cheeses were often made from milk that wasn't quite fresh, aged quickly in less than ideal conditions, and sold as soon as they were minimally edible. These fast cheeses served the same purpose as processed cheese products today. They were affordable, available, and provided protein and calories, even if they weren't particularly delicious. Dried fruits and nuts were the closest medieval equivalent to modern snack foods. However, the drying process was often hurried to get products to market quickly, resulting in fruits that were only partially dried, prone to spoilage, and sometimes developing mold or fermentation. Vendors would often mix good dried fruits with questionable ones, creating affordable mixtures that satisfied the desire for something sweet but weren't necessarily wholesome. The medieval version of what we might call street food included various porridges and gruels sold hot from large pots. These thick, filling concoctions were made from whatever grains were available, often mixed with scraps of meat, vegetables, or whatever the vendor had on hand. The quality varied dramatically depending on the honesty and skill of the vendor. Some were nutritious and satisfying, while others were watery, underseasoned, and made from ingredients that were past their prime. Pastries and sweet treats existed in medieval markets, but they were expensive and often poorly made by vendors trying to compete with established bakers. These street pastries were frequently made with inferior ingredients, lard instead of butter, rough flour, limited spices, and fillings that might include overripe fruits or questionable meat mixtures. They satisfied the human craving for treats and special foods. But like much fast food throughout history, they prioritized convenience and cost over quality and nutrition. The wine and ale sold at markets varied enormously in quality. Reputable vendors offered good products, but there were always those who sold watered down alcohol, wine made from inferior grapes, or ale that had been allowed to spoil slightly before being sold at reduced prices. These inferior alcoholic beverages were the medieval equivalent of cheap, low quality alcohol. They provided the desired effects, but often came with unpleasant side effects and questionable taste. As we observe this bustling medieval marketplace from our comfortable position beside the crackling fireplace, we begin to see the universal human tendency to seek convenient, affordable food options, even when those options might not be the healthiest choices available. The medieval marketplace was full of vendors offering quick solutions to hunger, portable foods for busy people, and affordable alternatives to more expensive, higher quality options. The social dynamics of the medieval marketplace also reveal much about food culture of the time. Wealthy merchants and nobles could afford to be selective, purchasing the best products from reputable vendors. Middle class artisans and merchants made careful choices, balancing quality with cost. The poor, however, often had little choice but to purchase the cheapest available options, regardless of quality, leading to a market for low grade foods. that prioritized affordability over nutrition or taste. The warm glow of our fireplace continues to provide comfort as we gradually transition from the bustling marketplace into the more intimate world of medieval food preparation and consumption. The crackling flames cast dancing shadows that seem to transport us deeper into this historical experience, where we can almost feel the worn wooden handles of medieval cooking utensils and smell the complex aromas of herbs and slowly cooking food. Moving away from the public chaos of the marketplace, we find ourselves approaching a typical medieval kitchen, perhaps attached to a manor house or a prosperous merchant's dwelling. The transition from the outdoor market to this indoor cooking space represents a shift from commercial food culture to the more personal, intimate world of daily sustenance and family meals. The doorway to the medieval kitchen is low and wide, designed to accommodate the constant traffic of servants carrying water, fuel for the fire, and ingredients from storage areas. As we cross this threshold, we're immediately struck by the temperature difference. The kitchen is significantly warmer than the outside air, heated by the large central fireplace that serves as the heart of all cooking activities. The floor beneath our feet is made of large, flat stones, worn smooth by centuries of foot traffic and scrubbing with rough brushes and sand. These stones are practical. They don't rot like wood might in the humid environment of a working kitchen. They're relatively easy to clean, and they help radiate heat from the central fire throughout the room. Small rushes and herbs are scattered across the stone floor, both to provide some cushioning underfoot and to help absorb spills and odors. The walls of this medieval kitchen are thick stone, punctuated by small windows that provide minimal light during daylight hours. These windows are usually fitted with wooden shutters rather than glass, which was expensive and fragile. The thick walls help maintain temperature, keeping the kitchen warm in winter and providing some insulation against summer heat. Though summer cooking could make these spaces uncomfortably hot, shelving along the walls holds the kitchen's collection of tools and implements, each one crafted by hand and representing a significant investment. Wooden bowls of various sizes nest together, their surfaces smooth from years of use and repeated scrubbing with sand and harsh soap. Iron knives hang from hooks, their blades carefully maintained and sharpened regularly by the kitchen staff or traveling sharpeners who visited households periodically. Large ceramic jars and pots line one wall, containing preserved foods that form the backbone of medieval cooking. These containers hold salt-preserved meats, pickled vegetables, dried herbs, various grains, and other staples that allow for cooking throughout the year, regardless of seasonal availability. The contents of these jars represent months of careful preparation and preservation work, ensuring that the household can eat well even during the lean months of late winter and early spring. The central fireplace dominates the room, both physically and functionally. This massive stone structure is large enough to accommodate multiple cooking activities simultaneously. Iron hooks and chains of various lengths hang from a sturdy iron bar across the top of the fireplace opening, allowing pots to be raised or lowered depending on the intensity of heat needed for different cooking processes. A large iron cauldron hangs over the fire, containing what appears to be a perpetual stew or soup that serves as the foundation for many meals. Medieval cooks often maintained these continuous cooking pots, adding new ingredients as they became available and serving portions as needed. This approach made efficient use of fuel and ensured that hot food was always available for the household. To one side of the main fire, a smaller side hearth provides space for more delicate cooking tasks. Here, a shallow iron pan sits on a bed of coals, perfect for cooking flatbreads, small meat portions, or dishes that require more careful temperature control. This secondary cooking area demonstrates the sophistication of medieval kitchen design, allowing for multiple cooking techniques to be employed simultaneously. The air in the kitchen carries the complex sense of medieval cooking. Wood smoke mingles with the earthy aroma of root vegetables, the sharp scent of herbs, both fresh and dried, and the rich smell of slowly cooking meat. These aromas create an olfactory map of the kitchen's activities, telling stories of meals in preparation and foods being preserved for future consumption. Wooden preparation tables occupy the center of the room, their surfaces scarred and stained from years of chopping, kneading, and food preparation. These tables are substantial pieces of furniture built to withstand the heavy use of daily cooking activities. Their height is designed for efficient work while standing, as most medieval cooking was done on foot rather than seated. Bundles of dried herbs hang from wooden beams overhead, creating a living pharmacy and spice cabinet. These herbs serve multiple purposes: culinary seasoning, medicinal remedies, and natural preservation agents. The knowledge of which herbs to use for which purposes was passed down through generations of cooks, creating a sophisticated understanding of the intersection between food and medicine. Large wooden paddles and long handled spoons lean against the walls, tools designed for stirring the contents of deep pots and managing cooking fires. These implements show the wear of constant use, their handles smooth and darkened from countless hands gripping them during long cooking sessions. Clay storage vessels of various sizes contain daily use ingredients: coarse salt, various flours, dried peas and beans, and other staples that form the foundation of medieval cooking. These containers are practical and efficient, keeping ingredients dry and protected from rodents and insects that might otherwise contaminate the food supply. The lighting in this medieval kitchen comes primarily from the fire itself, supplemented by occasional candles or oil lamps during the darkest hours. This firelight creates an atmosphere of warmth and intimacy, casting everything in golden hues that soften the rough textures of stone walls and wooden implements. As we settle more comfortably into this medieval kitchen environment, we can almost feel ourselves becoming part of the rhythm of daily food preparation. The crackling of our fireplace beside us mirrors the sounds of the kitchen fire, creating a bridge between our modern comfort and this historical experience. The people who work in this kitchen move with practiced efficiency, their movements economical and purposeful. They understand the properties of their ingredients, the characteristics of their tools, and the requirements of their cooking methods in ways that come only from daily practice and inherited knowledge. The social aspects of the medieval kitchen become apparent as we observe the interactions between different levels of household staff. The head cook directs activities with quiet authority, while younger servants learn through observation and gradually increasing responsibility. Knowledge is transmitted through demonstration and practice rather than written recipes, creating a cooking tradition that is both flexible and deeply rooted in experience. Storage areas adjacent to the kitchen reveal the extensive preparation required for medieval food security. Root cellars, grain storage rooms, and preservation areas demonstrate the significant effort required to maintain a household's food supply throughout the year. These spaces represent insurance against famine, poor harvests, and the natural scarcity that marked medieval life. The gentle warmth from our fireplace continues to embrace us as we settle more deeply into our exploration of medieval culinary life. The soft crackling of the flames creates a perfect soundtrack for our journey into the heart of how medieval people experienced their daily relationship with food, comfort, and sustenance. We find ourselves now fully established within the rhythm of this medieval kitchen, no longer visitors, but observers who have earned the right to witness the intimate details of daily food preparation and consumption. The initial novelty of the strange sights and sounds has given way to a deeper appreciation of the complexity and sophistication that existed within what might appear to modern eyes as primitive cooking methods. The morning activities in the kitchen begin before dawn, when the fire is built up from the banked coals of the previous night. This daily renewal of the fire is both practical and almost ritualistic, representing the continuation of life and sustenance that depends on this central source of heat and cooking power. The person responsible for tending the fire understands its moods and requirements, knowing exactly how much wood to add, when to allow more airflow, and how to create the different types of heat needed for various cooking tasks. As the fire establishes itself and begins to provide steady heat, the kitchen comes alive with the preparation of the day's first meal. Medieval breakfast, when it existed as a separate meal, was typically simple fare, designed to provide energy for the day's work ahead. Leftover bread from the previous day might be soaked in ale or wine to soften it, creating a simple but nourishing porridge like dish that could be eaten quickly before beginning daily tasks. The bread itself tells a fascinating story of medieval nutrition and social status. The process of making bread in a medieval kitchen required significant planning and physical effort. Grain had to be ground into flour using hand operated querns or mills, a time consuming process that produced flour with a texture and composition very different from modern processed flour. Medieval flour contained more of the grain's natural components, including bran and germ, which provided additional nutrition but also made the bread denser and more perishable than modern white bread. The grinding process was never perfect, so medieval flour often contained small pieces of stone from the grinding apparatus, contributing to the significant tooth wear that archaeologists observe in medieval skeletal remains. The bread making process itself was a communal activity that involved multiple people and careful timing. The sourdough starter, maintained continuously and passed down through generations, provided the leavening that made bread rise. This living culture required daily attention and feeding, making it a valuable household asset that connected families to their culinary heritage. Kneading bread dough was physical work that required strength and technique. The large wooden preparation tables in the kitchen were designed to withstand the vigorous kneading required to develop the gluten in medieval flour. This process often took much longer than modern bread making because of the different characteristics of hand ground flour and natural leavening agents. The baking process presented its own challenges and required significant skill. Medieval ovens were typically large, stone lined chambers that were heated by building fires directly inside them. Once the stones were thoroughly heated, the coals and ash were removed, and bread loaves were placed inside using long wooden paddles. The residual heat baked the bread, but judging the correct temperature and timing required experience and intuition that took years to develop. While bread baked, other food preparation continued throughout the kitchen. The perpetual stew pot received attention and new ingredients, transforming yesterday's leftovers into today's meal through the addition of fresh vegetables, herbs, or small amounts of meat when available. This continuous cooking method was remarkably efficient, making use of every scrap of food and ensuring that nothing edible was wasted. Vegetables in medieval cooking were treated very differently than in modern cuisine. Fresh vegetables were seasonal luxuries, available only during their natural growing periods and generally consumed immediately after harvest. Root vegetables like turnips, carrots, and onions could be stored for longer periods and formed the backbone of winter cooking, but even these required careful storage and regular inspection to prevent spoilage. The medieval approach to vegetable preparation was practical rather than aesthetic. Vegetables were typically cooked until very soft, both because this made them easier to digest and because it helped eliminate potential harmful bacteria in an age without refrigeration. The concept of crisp, lightly cooked vegetables that we prize today would have seemed strange and potentially dangerous to medieval cooks. Herbs played a crucial role in medieval cooking that went far beyond simple flavoring. Each herb was understood to have specific properties that could aid digestion, prevent illness, or enhance the nutritional value of foods. The medieval cook was part chef and part herbalist, understanding which combinations of herbs would not only taste good together, but also provide the maximum health benefits for the people consuming the food. The preservation of herbs required careful timing and technique. Herbs had to be harvested at exactly the right moment in their growth cycle, when their essential oils and active compounds were at peak concentration. They were then dried using methods that preserved their potency while preventing spoilage, creating a pharmacy of natural remedies that doubled as cooking ingredients. Meat preparation in the medieval kitchen was a complex process that involved every part of the animal. Nothing was wasted, both because of economic necessity and because medieval people understood how to extract nutrition and utility from parts of animals that modern consumers might discard. Bones were boiled to make nutritious broths. Organs were prepared as delicacies or ground into sausages, and even blood was collected and used in various preparations. The salting and smoking of meat was a critical skill that could mean the difference between eating well through the winter or facing hunger during the lean months. These preservation techniques required precise knowledge of salt ratios, drying conditions, and smoking procedures that would prevent spoilage while creating palatable preserved foods. Dairy products in the medieval kitchen were handled with great care and skill. Milk, when available, was typically processed immediately into cheese, butter, or other preserved forms because fresh milk spoiled quickly without refrigeration. The cheese making process was both art and science, requiring understanding of bacterial cultures, aging processes, and storage conditions that would produce good cheese rather than spoiled milk. The rhythms of seasonal cooking became deeply embedded in the daily life of the medieval kitchen. Spring brought the first fresh greens and vegetables, a welcome relief after months of preserved foods. Summer meant abundance and intensive preservation work, preparing for the coming winter. Autumn was the season of harvest and celebration, when the year's hard work culminated in festivals and feasts. Winter required careful management of preserved foods and creative cooking to maintain variety and nutrition during the months of scarcity. As we observe these daily rhythms from our comfortable position beside the warm fireplace, we begin to appreciate the sophistication and complexity that existed within medieval food culture. The constraints of technology and resources led to innovations and techniques that were remarkably effective, creating a food system that sustained complex societies for centuries. The social aspects of the medieval kitchen reveal much about the values and relationships of the time. Food preparation was communal work that created bonds between household members and transmitted cultural knowledge from one generation to the next. The sharing of meals reinforced social hierarchies while also creating moments of community and connection that transcended class boundaries. As the flames of our fireplace dance gently in the gathering evening, we find ourselves drawn deeper into contemplation of the profound relationship between food, culture, and human nature that characterized medieval life. The soft crackling of burning wood creates a meditative atmosphere that perfectly complements our journey into understanding how food shaped not just bodies, but entire societies in ways that continue to influence us today. The medieval relationship with food was fundamentally different from our modern experience in ways that reveal deep truths about human nature and social organization. Where we often view food as fuel for our bodies or entertainment for our palates, medieval people understood food as something far more complex. It was medicine, social currency, spiritual practice, and survival strategy, all woven together into a seamless understanding of nourishment. The concept of comfort food existed in medieval times, though it manifested in forms that might surprise modern sensibilities. For the wealthy, comfort foods included elaborate spiced wines that were believed to have medicinal properties, rich meat pies that demonstrated abundance and security, and imported delicacies that connected them to distant places and exotic experiences. These foods provided not just physical satisfaction, but psychological comfort through their associations with status, security, and worldliness. For common people, comfort foods were simpler but no less meaningful. A bowl of warm pottage, a thick stew made from whatever ingredients were available, represented safety, family, and the successful navigation of another day's challenges. Fresh bread, when available, was both sustenance and celebration, its aroma filling homes with the scent of security and plenty. Ale or weak beer provided not just nutrition and hydration, but also mild intoxication that could ease the hardships of daily medieval life. The medieval understanding of what we might call junk food was sophisticated and nuanced. They recognized that certain foods provided quick energy but little lasting nutrition, that some foods were more about pleasure than sustenance, and that the timing and context of eating different foods affected their impact on health and well being. However, their approach to these foods was integrated into a broader understanding of balance and moderation that was both practical and philosophical. Street vendors in medieval towns sold various forms of quick, convenient foods that served functions similar to modern fast food. Meat pies, with thick, hard crusts that served as edible containers, allowed people to eat filling, protein rich meals without needing utensils or plates. These pies were often made with lower quality ingredients, scraps of meat, coarse flour, and heavy seasonings, but they filled an important need for busy merchants, craftspeople, and laborers who needed to eat quickly and efficiently. The quality of these convenient foods varied enormously, creating a medieval equivalent of the modern spectrum from premium fast food to bottom tier processed meals. Reputable vendors took pride in their products and built loyal customer bases through consistency and quality. Less scrupulous vendors cut corners, used questionable ingredients, and prioritized profit over customer satisfaction, creating a market dynamic that would be familiar to any modern consumer. Medieval drinking culture reveals fascinating parallels to modern concerns about processed foods and their effects on health and society. Ale and weak beer were daily beverages for people of all ages, consumed because they were often safer than water and provided calories and nutrition. However, the quality varied dramatically, and cheap, poorly made alcohol could cause illness, poor judgment, and addiction just as effectively as higher quality beverages. The medieval equivalent of what we might call processed foods included various preserved meats, pickled vegetables, and grain based products that prioritized shelf life and convenience over fresh taste and optimal nutrition. Sausages, for example, were often made from scraps and less desirable cuts of meat, mixed with grain fillers and preserved with salt and spices. While these products served important functions in medieval food systems, they were understood to be less nutritious and less desirable than fresh alternatives. The spice trade reveals another aspect of medieval food culture that parallels modern concerns about food processing and additives. Expensive spices were often adulterated with cheaper substances to increase profits, creating medieval versions of food fraud that required consumers to develop expertise in detecting authentic products. The desire for exotic flavors led to a willingness to pay high prices for substances that were often heavily processed and sometimes contaminated during their long journeys from distant lands. Medieval attitudes toward sugar and sweet foods provide insight into human nature's relationship with pleasure and indulgence. Sugar was extremely expensive and rare, making it a luxury item that was often reserved for special occasions and medicinal purposes. Honey was more available, but still precious, leading to a culture where sweet foods were treats rather than daily expectations. This scarcity created a different relationship with sweetness, one where small amounts provided intense pleasure and satisfaction. The medieval feast reveals the complex social and psychological functions that food served beyond basic nutrition. These elaborate meals were performances of wealth, power, and cultural sophistication that used food as a medium for storytelling, social bonding, and political negotiation. The excess and variety displayed at medieval feasts served functions similar to modern luxury dining experiences, creating memories and associations that extended far beyond the actual consumption of food. However, medieval feasts also demonstrated understanding of balance and moderation that might surprise modern observers. These elaborate meals were infrequent events that contrasted with daily eating patterns that were generally simple and restrained. The medieval calendar included numerous fast days and periods of dietary restriction that balanced times of abundance with times of restraint, creating rhythms of indulgence and moderation that supported both physical and spiritual health. The role of women in medieval food culture reveals deep truths about knowledge transmission, community building, and cultural preservation. Women were typically responsible for daily food preparation, preservation techniques, and the herbal knowledge that connected food to medicine. This responsibility made them central figures in maintaining household health and cultural traditions, even in societies that formally limited their power and authority in other spheres. The medieval understanding of food as medicine created a holistic approach to eating that integrated nutrition, flavor, and therapeutic effects in ways that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Medieval cooks understood that certain combinations of foods aided digestion, that specific herbs could prevent illness, and that the timing and context of eating affected how food was processed by the body. The seasonal rhythms of medieval eating created natural patterns of variety and balance that supported both physical and psychological health. The anticipation of seasonal foods, fresh vegetables in spring, fruits in summer, harvest celebrations in autumn, and preserved foods in winter, created cycles of expectation and satisfaction that enriched the eating experience beyond mere nutrition. As we contemplate these deep connections between food, culture, and human nature from our comfortable position beside the warming fire, we begin to understand that medieval approaches to food contained wisdom that transcends their particular technological and social constraints. Their integration of pleasure and nutrition, their understanding of food as social currency, and their appreciation of eating as both individual and communal activity created a food culture that was both practical and meaningful. The medieval experience of scarcity and abundance created appreciation for food that is difficult to maintain in our age of plenty. The knowledge that food required effort to produce, skill to prepare, and care to preserve created relationships with eating that were grounded in reality rather than fantasy. This connection to the actual work of food production created gratitude and mindfulness that enhanced both the pleasure and nutrition derived from eating. The fire beside us burns, lower now, its flames settling into steady, hypnotic patterns that seem to mirror the deep rhythms of medieval life we've been exploring. The gentle warmth continues to embrace us as we sink deeper into contemplation of the profound wisdom embedded in centuries of human food traditions. Wisdom that speaks to fundamental truths about nourishment, community, and the art of living. Well, in this deeper state of reflection, we begin to understand that medieval food culture represented something precious that has been partially lost in our modern world, an integrated understanding of eating as a practice that nourished not just the body, but the soul, the community, and the connection between humans and the natural world that sustained them. The medieval monastery kitchen represents perhaps the most refined expression of this integrated approach to food and nourishment. In these sacred spaces, the preparation of food was understood as a form of prayer, a meditation on the gifts of creation, and a practice of service to the community. Monks who worked in monastery kitchens approached their tasks with the same devotion and attention that others brought to copying manuscripts or tending gardens. The monastic approach to eating emphasized moderation, gratitude, and mindfulness in ways that created deeper satisfaction from simpler foods. A bowl of plain porridge, eaten in silence while contemplating its journey from grain to table, could provide more genuine nourishment than an elaborate feast consumed without attention or appreciation. This understanding that the quality of attention we bring to eating affects the nourishment we receive from food represents wisdom that transcends any particular religious tradition. The preservation techniques developed in medieval monasteries demonstrate the profound creativity that emerges when communities commit to working within natural constraints rather than trying to overcome them. Monks developed sophisticated methods for preserving foods that worked with natural processes rather than against them, creating systems that were both sustainable and deeply satisfying. The monastery garden represents a perfect example of integrated thinking about food production. These gardens were designed as living libraries of culinary and medicinal knowledge, where every plant served multiple purposes and the relationships between different species were carefully cultivated to create beneficial interactions. Herbs that improved soil fertility were planted alongside vegetables that would benefit from their presence, while aromatic plants that deterred pests were positioned to protect more vulnerable crops. The daily rhythm of monastic life created natural patterns of eating that supported both physical health and spiritual practice. Meals were eaten in silence, allowing diners to focus completely on the flavors, textures, and nourishment they were receiving. This practice of mindful eating transformed even simple foods into profound experiences of gratitude and connection to the sources of life. The monastic brewing tradition reveals how medieval people understood the transformation of simple ingredients into complex, nourishing beverages through patience and skill. The process of brewing beer was seen as a collaboration with natural forces, wild yeasts, beneficial bacteria, and the subtle chemistry of fermentation that could transform grain and water into beverages that were both nourishing and mildly intoxicating. Medieval herbalism represents perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the integration between food and medicine that characterized this period. Monastery herb gardens contained hundreds of different plants, each understood to have specific properties that could support health, treat illness, or enhance the nutritional value of foods. The knowledge of how to grow, harvest, prepare, and combine these herbs was passed down through generations of monastics who dedicated their lives to understanding the healing properties of plants. The medieval understanding of the connection between emotional state and digestion was remarkably sophisticated. They recognized that food consumed in states of stress, anger, or sadness was less nourishing than the same food eaten in states of peace, gratitude, and joy. This understanding led to practices around mealtime that emphasized creating positive, emotional states before and during eating. The seasonal festivals that marked medieval agricultural cycles created community experiences around food that strengthened social bonds while celebrating the abundance and scarcity that marked different times of year. Harvest festivals, for example, were not just celebrations of plenty, but acknowledgments of the hard work, favorable weather, and good fortune that made abundance possible. These celebrations created shared memories and cultural narratives that gave meaning to the cycles of planting, tending, and harvesting that sustained the community. The medieval understanding of hospitality reveals deep wisdom about the social and spiritual dimensions of sharing food. Offering food to travelers, guests, and those in need was seen not just as social courtesy, but as a sacred obligation that created bonds between people and acknowledged the fundamental interdependence that characterizes human life. The quality of hospitality was measured not just by the abundance of food offered, but by the genuine care and attention shown to guests. The apprenticeship system that transmitted culinary knowledge in medieval times created deep, embodied understanding that went far beyond following recipes. Young people learned to cook by working alongside experienced practitioners for years, gradually developing the intuitive understanding of ingredients, techniques, and timing that can only come through repeated practice and careful observation. This system created master cooks who understood their craft at levels that integrated technical skill with artistic sensibility and cultural wisdom. The medieval marketplace, with all its chaos and complexity, served functions that went far beyond simple commerce. These gathering places were where news was shared, relationships were formed, and cultural knowledge was transmitted. The act of purchasing food was embedded in a web of social relationships that connected rural producers with urban consumers, creating networks of mutual dependence that strengthened community resilience. The cooking techniques developed in medieval kitchens represent solutions to practical problems that were both ingenious and sustainable. The use of residual heat from bread ovens to cook other foods, the maintenance of perpetual stews that made efficient use of fuel and ingredients, and the development of preservation methods that extended the availability of seasonal foods, all demonstrate thinking that prioritized efficiency and sustainability over convenience and speed. The medieval understanding of food as a source of pleasure was balanced by an appreciation of moderation that created sustainable relationships with eating. Feast days were special precisely because they contrasted with ordinary days of simpler fare. This rhythm of abundance and restraint created anticipation and appreciation that enhanced the pleasure derived from special foods while maintaining health and avoiding the problems associated with constant overindulgence. The integration of wild foods into medieval diets reveals sophisticated knowledge of local ecosystems and seasonal availability. People knew which wild plants were edible when they were at their best and how to prepare them safely and deliciously. This knowledge created food security that didn't depend entirely on cultivated crops and connected people directly to the landscapes that sustained them. The medieval approach to food storage and preservation was based on understanding and working with natural processes rather than trying to control them through artificial means. Root cellars were designed to maintain consistent temperatures and humidity levels that would keep vegetables fresh through winter months. Smoking and salting techniques were refined through generations of experience to create preserved foods that were not just safe to eat, but genuinely delicious. The social rituals surrounding medieval meals created frameworks for community building and cultural transmission that enriched the eating experience far beyond simple nutrition. The order in which people were served, the foods that were offered to different social ranks, and the conversations that accompanied meals all served to reinforce cultural values while creating shared experiences that strengthened community bonds. The medieval understanding of the relationship between food and season created eating patterns that were inherently sustainable and deeply satisfying. The anticipation of seasonal foods, the first wild greens of spring, the abundant fruits of summer, the hardy root vegetables of autumn, and the preserved foods that sustained communities through winter created natural rhythms of variety and appreciation that enhanced both nutrition and pleasure. As we rest more deeply into our contemplation beside the gentle fire, we begin to understand that medieval food culture contained wisdom about living well that transcends the particular constraints and possibilities of that historical period. Their integrated understanding of food as medicine, pleasure, social currency, and spiritual practice created approaches to eating that supported human flourishing in ways that remain relevant and valuable today. The medieval appreciation for the work involved in producing, preparing, and preserving food created relationships with eating that were grounded in reality and gratitude. This understanding that food doesn't simply appear, but requires effort, skill, and favorable conditions created mindfulness around eating that enhanced both the pleasure and nutrition derived from food, while fostering appreciation for the natural and human systems that make nourishment possible. The fire has settled into its deepest, most peaceful rhythm now, casting a warm, golden glow that seems to transport us completely into a state of profound understanding about the eternal human relationship with food, nourishment, and the deeper meanings that eating has carried throughout human history. The gentle crackling creates a meditative soundscape that allows us to sink into the most profound contemplations of how food has shaped not just bodies, but souls across the centuries. In this transcendent state of reflection, we begin to perceive the medieval understanding of food as part of a larger cosmic order that connected human nourishment to the rhythms of Earth, seasons, and the mysterious forces that govern growth, decay, and renewal. Medieval people lived within a worldview that saw food not as a commodity to be consumed, but as a gift that connected them to the divine source of all life and abundance. The medieval conception of the feast as a reflection of divine abundance reveals profound spiritual dimensions of eating that have been largely lost in our modern world. These elaborate celebrations were not just displays of wealth or social status, but attempts to create earthly experiences that reflected the perfect abundance and joy believed to characterize divine reality. Every element of a medieval feast, the variety of foods, the artistry of preparation, the order of service, and the community of diners, was understood to be a pale but meaningful reflection of the perfect celebration that would characterize eternal life. The practice of saying grace before meals in medieval times was not mere religious formality, but a genuine attempt to connect the physical act of eating with spiritual awareness of the sources of nourishment that extend far beyond the immediate food being consumed. These prayers acknowledged the sun, rain, soil, seeds, and human labor that made each meal possible, creating consciousness of the vast web of relationships and dependencies that connect each person to the living systems that sustain all life. The medieval understanding of fasting reveals sophisticated wisdom about the relationship between restraint and appreciation that can transform the experience of eating from mere consumption into a practice of spiritual development. Periods of voluntary food restriction were understood to sharpen awareness, increase gratitude, and create psychological states that enhanced the pleasure and meaning derived from eating when it resumed. The monastic tradition of eating in silence created opportunities for deep appreciation of food that transformed simple meals into profound meditative experiences. Without the distraction of conversation, diners could focus completely on the flavors, textures, and aromas of their food, creating awareness of subtleties and complexities that are missed when eating is merely a background activity to social interaction or entertainment. The medieval herbalist's understanding of food as medicine represents a holistic approach to nourishment that recognized the profound connections between what we eat and how we feel, think, and function in the world. This knowledge was not just about treating illness, but about supporting optimal human flourishing through careful attention to the qualities and effects of different foods, herbs, and combinations. The seasonal rhythms of medieval eating created natural patterns of variety and renewal that supported both physical health and psychological well being. The eagerly anticipated return of fresh foods in spring, the abundance and preservation work of summer and autumn, and the quiet contemplation of winter created cycles of experience that connected human life to the larger rhythms of natural abundance and scarcity. The medieval understanding of hospitality as a sacred practice reveals deep wisdom about the spiritual dimensions of sharing food. Offering nourishment to others was seen not as a burden or expense, but as an opportunity to participate in the divine generosity that makes all life possible. The quality of attention and care shown to guests was understood to be as important as the food itself in creating experiences of genuine nourishment. The integration of work and eating in medieval life created relationships with food that were grounded in understanding and appreciation of the effort required to transform raw materials into nourishing meals. People who participated in growing, harvesting, preserving, and preparing their food developed deep appreciation for the miracle of nourishment that is easily lost when food appears to come effortlessly from distant sources. The medieval marketplace, despite its apparent chaos and commercial focus, served as a gathering place where the exchange of food was embedded in webs of social relationship that created community and cultural continuity. The haggling over prices, the evaluation of quality, and the sharing of information about sources and preparation methods all contributed to a food culture that was deeply social and participatory. The preservation techniques developed in medieval times represent profound creativity in working with natural processes to extend abundance through periods of scarcity. These methods required patience, skill, and understanding of the subtle processes of fermentation, drying, and chemical transformation that could convert fresh foods into preserved forms that were not just safe, but often more complex and interesting than their fresh counterparts. The medieval understanding of the connection between food and place created eating experiences that were deeply rooted in local landscapes, seasons, and cultural traditions. This rootedness created identity and belonging that enriched the meaning of meals far beyond their nutritional content, making eating an act of participation in the particular place and culture that sustained each community. The ritual aspects of medieval eating, the order of service, the specific foods associated with different occasions, and the ceremonial elements that marked special meals, created frameworks of meaning that transformed ordinary biological necessity into cultural and spiritual practice. These rituals acknowledged that eating is never just about individual nutrition, but always about relationships, values, and the larger contexts that give life meaning. The medieval apprenticeship system for learning culinary skills created deep, embodied knowledge that integrated technical ability with cultural understanding and artistic sensibility. Master cooks developed intuitive understanding of their materials and methods that allowed them to create not just nourishing, but beautiful and meaningful food experiences that served their communities at multiple levels. The medieval understanding of moderation as a virtue that enhanced rather than restricted pleasure reveals sophisticated wisdom about sustainable approaches to eating and enjoyment. The practice of alternating abundance with restraint created appreciation and anticipation that made special foods truly special while maintaining health and avoiding the problems associated with constant overindulgence. The connection between medieval food culture and the natural world created eating practices that were inherently sustainable and regenerative. The understanding that human nourishment depended on maintaining the health of soils, waters, and ecological systems led to agricultural and culinary practices that supported rather than depleted the natural foundations of abundance. The medieval integration of beauty with utility in food preparation and presentation reveals understanding that nourishment involves all the senses and that the aesthetic dimensions of eating contribute to its effectiveness in supporting human flourishing. Beautiful food was understood to be more nourishing than identical food that was carelessly presented, acknowledging the importance of pleasure and delight in the experience of nourishment. As we sink deeper into this transcendent understanding, supported by the gentle warmth and rhythmic sounds of our fire, we begin to perceive that the medieval relationship with food contained wisdom that speaks to eternal aspects of human nature and need. Their integration of pleasure and purpose, their understanding of eating as both individual and communal practice, and their appreciation of food as connecting them to larger sources of life and meaning created approaches to nourishment that supported not just physical health, but psychological and spiritual well being. The medieval experience of eating as embedded in webs of relationship to land, season, community, and divine source created nourishment that was far richer than the sum of its nutritional components. This understanding that food is never just fuel, but always carries meanings, relationships, and possibilities for connection to larger realities represents wisdom that remains relevant and valuable, regardless of the particular technological and social conditions that shape how food is produced and consumed. The fire beside us has burned down to its most peaceful state, glowing embers that radiate steady warmth, while the gentle sounds of settling wood create the perfect background for our transition from active contemplation to the restful state that precedes deep, nourishing sleep. The wisdom we've gathered about medieval food culture begins to settle into our consciousness like the satisfying feeling that follows a perfect meal, complete, nourishing, and deeply satisfying. As we prepare to transition from our journey through medieval culinary wisdom into the restorative realm of sleep, we can feel our bodies and minds naturally beginning to slow down, much like the medieval household, as evening approached and the day's cooking activities gradually came to their peaceful conclusion. In medieval times, the evening represented a natural transition from the active work of food preparation and consumption to the quiet activities that prepared both body and spirit for rest. As daylight faded and candles were lit sparingly to conserve precious resources, the kitchen gradually transformed from a bustling center of activity into a peaceful space where the day's fires were banked. Tools were cleaned and stored, and the household prepared for the renewal that sleep would bring. The evening meal in medieval households was typically simpler than the midday meal, designed to provide gentle nourishment that would satisfy hunger without overwhelming the digestive system before rest. Soft porridges, warm broths, and easily digestible foods were preferred for evening consumption, reflecting an intuitive understanding that the type and quantity of food consumed before sleep affected the quality of rest that followed. The practice of preparing the kitchen for night reveals the medieval understanding of rest as an active practice rather than simply the absence of activity. The fire was carefully banked so that coals would remain alive through the night, ready to be rekindled in the morning. Tools were cleaned and arranged so that morning work could begin efficiently. Ingredients were checked and stored properly to prevent spoilage during the night hours. This careful preparation created a sense of completion and order that supported peaceful sleep by ensuring that the mind was not occupied with unfinished tasks or concerns about the next day's needs. The medieval understanding that external order supports internal peace remains as relevant today as it was centuries ago, offering wisdom about how our physical environment affects our ability to rest deeply and wake refreshed. The evening rituals around food and eating in medieval times created natural transitions between the active engagement of daily life and the receptive state that allows for deep rest and renewal. These rituals might include sharing simple evening foods with family or household members, expressing gratitude for the day's nourishment, or engaging in quiet conversation that processed the day's experiences and prepared the mind for rest. The medieval understanding of sleep as a time of restoration that affected not just individual well being, but community health led to cultural practices that supported good sleep for all household members. Sleeping areas were arranged to provide warmth and comfort within the constraints of available resources. Stories might be shared in the evening to help settle minds and emotions before sleep. Herbal preparations were sometimes used to promote restful sleep and pleasant dreams. The connection between food and sleep was well understood in medieval times, with certain foods and drinks recognized as promoting restful sleep, while others were known to cause restlessness or disturbing dreams. Warm, milk based drinks with honey and gentle spices were often consumed before bed to promote peaceful sleep. Light, easily digestible evening meals prevented the discomfort that could interfere with rest, while providing gentle nourishment that supported the body's overnight restoration processes. The medieval appreciation for the cycles of activity and rest that characterize healthy human life created natural rhythms that supported both productivity and restoration. The understanding that periods of rest were not laziness, but necessary components of a life well lived led to cultural practices that honored sleep and created conditions that supported deep, restorative rest. As we settle more deeply into our comfortable position beside the glowing embers of our fire, we can feel our own bodies beginning to respond to the natural cues for rest that our medieval ancestors would have recognized and honored. The warmth that surrounds us, the gentle sounds of the dying fire, and the sense of completion that comes from having explored profound questions about food, culture, and human nature all combine to create ideal conditions for the transition into sleep. The wisdom we've gathered from our exploration of medieval food culture begins to integrate into our deeper understanding, much like the way nutrients from a good meal are gradually absorbed and distributed throughout the body to support optimal function. The insights about the relationship between food and community, the importance of gratitude and mindfulness in eating, and the understanding of nourishment as encompassing far more than simple nutrition settle into our consciousness, where they can continue to enrich our relationship with food and eating. The medieval understanding of rest as an active practice of renewal rather than simply the absence of activity offers guidance for our own transition into sleep. Just as medieval people prepared their kitchens and households for night with careful attention to creating order, and security, we can prepare our own minds and bodies for rest by releasing the concerns and activities of the day and opening ourselves to the restoration that sleep provides. The gentle rhythm of our breathing begins to slow and deepen, matching the peaceful rhythm of the glowing embers beside us. The weight of our bodies settles more completely into our comfortable resting place, and the tension that accompanies active thinking and exploration gradually releases, preparing us for the profound rest that allows both body and mind to restore themselves for whatever tomorrow may bring. The medieval appreciation for the mystery and wonder of sleep, the understanding that rest allows for healing, growth, and the mysterious process of dreaming that connects conscious experience to deeper sources of wisdom and creativity, invites us to approach our own sleep with respect and appreciation rather than seeing it as simply a necessary interruption to our active lives. As the fire beside us settles into its most peaceful state, with only the softest glow remaining and the gentlest sounds of settling coals, we too begin our own settling into the deep peace that precedes truly restorative sleep. The warmth that surrounds us, the wisdom we've gathered, and the natural rhythms of rest that have sustained humans for millennia all combine to create perfect conditions for the final transition into the deep renewal that sleep provides. The medieval understanding that good food, good company, good work, and good rest are all interconnected aspects of a life well lived offers us a holistic approach to well being that honors both our need for activity and our need for rest. As we prepare to cross the threshold from contemplation into sleep, we carry with us the understanding that rest is not an escape from life, but an essential component of living fully and well. The gentle sounds of the fire, the comfortable warmth that surrounds us, and the peaceful completion of our exploration into medieval food wisdom all combine to create the perfect environment for releasing the day's activities and opening ourselves to the mysterious and essential process of sleep that will restore our bodies, integrate our experiences, and prepare us for whatever adventures tomorrow may bring. The medieval craft of brewing reveals another dimension of food culture that combined practical skill with almost mystical understanding of transformation processes. Master brewers developed intuitive knowledge of how grain, water, wild yeasts, and time could be combined to create beverages that were not just safe to drink, but genuinely delicious and mildly intoxicating. The brewing process required patience, attention to detail, and understanding of subtle environmental factors that could affect the final product. The seasonal brewing calendar reflected the medieval understanding of working with natural rhythms rather than trying to control them. Different types of beer were brewed at different times of year, taking advantage of seasonal temperatures, available ingredients, and storage requirements. Strong ales might be brewed in autumn to age through winter, while lighter beers were made in spring when fresh ingredients became available. The medieval understanding of fermentation as a beneficial process that could improve both the nutritional value and keeping qualities of foods led to sophisticated preservation techniques that created complex, flavorful foods from simple ingredients. Fermented vegetables, dairy products, and grain based foods provided probiotics and enzymes that supported digestive health while creating foods that were often more interesting and flavorful than their fresh counterparts. The role of trade in medieval food culture created opportunities for culinary exchange that enriched local food traditions without overwhelming them. Spices, preserved foods, and new ingredients arrived along trade routes at a pace that allowed for gradual integration into local food cultures rather than the rapid displacement of traditional foods that characterizes modern globalization. The medieval understanding of food as a form of wealth that could be stored, traded, and accumulated led to sophisticated systems of food storage and management that provided security against uncertain harvests and economic disruption. These systems required understanding of preservation techniques, storage conditions, and inventory management that protected communities against food insecurity. The integration of wild foods into medieval diets reveals sophisticated knowledge of local ecosystems and seasonal availability that connected people directly to the landscapes that sustained them. Knowledge of which wild plants were edible when they were at their best and how to prepare them safely was passed down through generations and provided food security that didn't depend entirely on cultivated crops. The medieval approach to food sharing within communities created networks of mutual support that helped ensure that everyone had access to basic nutrition, even during difficult times. These sharing systems were based on understanding that community food security was more important than individual accumulation, and that everyone benefited when basic needs were met throughout the community. The ritual aspects of medieval food preparation created frameworks of meaning that transformed ordinary biological necessity into cultural and spiritual practice. The blessing of seeds before planting, the celebration of harvests, and the consecration of special foods all acknowledged that eating was never just about individual nutrition, but always about relationships, values, and the larger contexts that give life meaning. The medieval understanding of the connection between food and memory led to practices that used specific foods to mark important occasions and create lasting associations between tastes and significant life events. Wedding feasts, funeral meals, and holiday celebrations created sensory memories that could evoke powerful emotional responses and strengthen community bonds across time. The apprenticeship system for learning culinary skills created deep, embodied knowledge that integrated technical ability with cultural understanding and artistic sensibility. Young people learned not just how to perform specific techniques, but how to understand their materials, adapt to changing conditions, and create food experiences that served their communities at multiple levels. The medieval appreciation for the beauty of food, as well as its nutritional value, led to practices of food presentation and artistic arrangement that acknowledge the importance of visual pleasure in the eating experience. Even simple foods were arranged with care and attention to color, texture, and composition that enhanced their appeal and demonstrated respect for both the food and the people who would eat it. The seasonal festivals that marked medieval agricultural cycles created community experiences around food that strengthened social bonds while celebrating the abundance and scarcity that marked different times of year. These celebrations acknowledged the hard work, favorable weather, and good fortune that made abundance possible while preparing communities for the leaner times that might follow. The medieval understanding of hospitality as a sacred practice that connected hosts to divine sources of abundance led to generous sharing of food with travelers, guests, and those in need. This hospitality was understood not as a burden, but as an opportunity to participate in the cosmic generosity that sustains all life and to create bonds between people that transcended immediate self interest. The integration of food with celebration in medieval times created associations between specific foods and joyful occasions that enhanced the pleasure derived from eating while creating cultural traditions that connected generations. These celebratory foods were often elaborate and expensive, making them truly special while creating shared experiences that strengthened community identity. The medieval practice of food blessing and grace created opportunities for expressing gratitude and acknowledging the sources of nourishment that extended far beyond the immediate meal. These practices recognized that food never simply appears, but always represents the convergence of natural processes, human effort, and favorable circumstances that make nourishment possible. The understanding of food as medicine that characterized medieval times led to sophisticated dietary therapies that used specific foods and combinations to treat illness and support optimal health. This knowledge was based on centuries of observation and experience that identified the healing properties of different foods and the best ways to combine them for therapeutic effect. The medieval approach to eating that emphasized sharing and community created social experiences around food that enriched the nutritional value of meals while strengthening the relationships that sustained communities. The understanding that eating alone was less nourishing than eating with others led to practices that prioritized communal meals whenever possible. The seasonal rhythms of medieval eating created natural patterns of variety and renewal that supported both physical health and psychological well being. The eagerly anticipated return of fresh foods in spring, the abundance and preservation work of summer and autumn, and the quiet contemplation of winter created cycles of experience that connected human life to the larger rhythms of natural abundance and scarcity. As sleep draws ever closer and consciousness continues to fade peacefully, these deeper insights into medieval food wisdom become part of the rich tapestry of understanding that will accompany us into rest and renewal. The gentle warmth of our fire, the comfortable support of our resting place, and the satisfying completion of our exploration create perfect conditions for the final transition into the deep, restorative sleep that awaits. The medieval understanding that sleep itself was a form of nourishment that restored not just the body, but the soul offers us permission to fully embrace this approaching rest as an essential component of our well being. Just as medieval people understood that food, work, rest, and community were all interconnected aspects of a life well lived, we too can approach sleep as an active practice of self care that prepares us for renewed engagement with life. Sweet dreams, peaceful rest, and gentle renewal through the quiet hours of night, carrying with us the timeless wisdom of those who understood that nourishment encompasses far more than food, that community enriches every meal, and that gratitude transforms even simple fare into feast. The fire beside us now burns with the softest possible glow, its light barely visible, but its warmth still present, creating the perfect environment for the final minutes of our journey into complete rest and renewal. Like the medieval household, in its deepest hours of night, when all activities have ceased and peaceful sleep has settled over every inhabitant, we too approach the threshold of deep, restorative sleep. Our breathing has naturally slowed to its most peaceful rhythm, matching the gentle, almost silent settling of the final embers in our fireplace. Each breath carries us deeper into relaxation, releasing any remaining tension from the day's activities and opening us completely to the gift of sleep that approaches. The warmth that surrounds us penetrates to the very core of our being, relaxing muscles, calming thoughts, and creating the perfect conditions for the mysterious process of sleep that will restore our bodies, integrate our experiences, and prepare us for whatever tomorrow may bring. This warmth reminds us of the medieval understanding that comfort, when available, should be received with deep gratitude. The insights and wisdom we've gathered about medieval food culture settle into our consciousness like nutrients from a perfect meal being absorbed and distributed throughout the body. These understandings about community, gratitude, seasonal rhythms, and the deeper meanings of nourishment become part of our inner landscape, enriching our relationship with food and eating in ways that will continue long after we wake. The gentle sounds of our dying fire, the barely audible whisper of warm air, the softest settling of coals, the almost inaudible crackling of the last small flames, create a natural lullaby that guides us into the deepest states of rest. These sounds become part of the background of our awareness, neither disturbing our sleep nor requiring our attention. Our eyelids grow naturally heavier with each passing moment as the combination of perfect warmth, complete comfort, and the satisfying completion of our journey through medieval food wisdom creates ideal conditions for sleep. The soft glow from the dying embers provides just enough light to maintain a sense of security without stimulating continued wakefulness. The medieval understanding of sleep as a sacred time when the soul could travel and explore realms beyond ordinary consciousness invites us to release our attachment to controlling our experience and instead open ourselves to whatever gifts the night may bring. This understanding transforms sleep from mere biological necessity into adventure and renewal. As consciousness begins to fade naturally and peacefully, we can trust in the same biological processes that sustained medieval people through their cycles of work and rest, the same capacity for restoration that sleep has always provided, and the same mysterious renewal that connects us to the deepest sources of healing and wisdoms. The weight of our bodies settles completely into our resting place as the last traces of muscular tension release, allowing us to sink into the perfect support that cradles us through the night, starting from the crown of our head and moving gradually through every part of our body Complete relaxation spreads like warm honey, preparing us for the deepest possible rest. Our thoughts become like clouds dissolving in a clear sky, present for a moment and then gently fading away, leaving behind the peaceful emptiness that characterizes the transition into sleep. The fascinating insights about medieval food culture that we've explored remain available, but no longer require active attention, allowing our minds to settle into the quiet that precedes dreams. The fire beside us reaches its most peaceful state, glowing so gently that it seems to breathe with us, its rhythm perfectly synchronized with our own. As we approach the final moments of consciousness before sleep, this gentle light will continue through the night, providing comfort and security while we rest. Just as medieval fires provided warmth and protection through the dark hours, the medieval practice of ending each day with gratitude offers us the perfect way to complete our conscious experience and welcome sleep. We feel grateful for the warmth and comfort that surround us, for the fascinating journey through medieval food wisdom, for the insights we've gained, and for the approaching gift of deep, restorative sleep. The rhythm of our heartbeat slows to its most peaceful pace as our cardiovascular system shifts into the repair and renewal mode that characterizes healthy sleep. The blood flow to our brain changes subtly, supporting the processes of memory, consolidation, and restoration that will integrate today's experiences while preparing us for tomorrow's adventures. Like the medieval household, settling into complete quiet, trusting in the banked coals to maintain minimal warmth until morning, and in the coming dawn to bring new opportunities for work and nourishment. We too trust in the natural processes of rest and renewal to restore us completely for whatever tomorrow may bring. The gentle glow of our fire becomes a bridge between waking and sleeping, between the active exploration of the evening and the passive restoration of the night. As this light grows ever dimmer and our consciousness fades correspondingly, we cross naturally and peacefully into the realm of sleep, where healing, growth, and renewal occur below the threshold of awareness. Our last conscious awareness settles on the absolute perfection of this moment, the ideal temperature that embraces us, the complete support of our resting place, the gentle sounds and soft light of our dying fire, and the deep satisfaction that comes from having completed our journey through the wisdom of medieval food culture. With this final awareness comes the natural, effortless release into sleep, welcomed rather than resisted, embraced as the perfect conclusion to our evening of exploration and the ideal preparation for renewal and restoration. In this sleep, we join the eternal human experience of rest that has sustained our species since the beginning of time. The fire glows on quietly through the deepest hours of night, its warmth gradually diminishing, but never completely disappearing, just as medieval fires provided comfort and security until morning brought the renewal of light and activity. In our sleep, we are connected to all humans who have ever sought rest by firelight, who have ever found comfort in warmth and peace. Sleep comes as naturally as breathing, as peacefully as the setting of the sun, as gently as the dying of our fire into glowing embers that will warm us through the night. In this sleep, we are restored, renewed, and prepared for whatever adventures tomorrow may bring, carrying with us the timeless wisdom of those who understood that nourishment, rest, and community are the foundations of a life well lived. Deep, peaceful sleep embraces us completely, providing the perfect rest that restores body, mind, and spirit for the new day that awaits. Sweet dreams, profound rest, and gentle renewal through all the quiet hours until dawn brings its promise of new beginnings and continued adventures in understanding the rich tapestry of human food culture and wisdoms. The end. 180 minutes. Complete. Total duration. 3 hours of peaceful, sleep inducing medieval food history. May your rest be deep, your dreams peaceful, and your renewal complete. Lived offers us a holistic approach to well being that honors both our need for activity and our need for rest. As we prepare to cross the threshold from contemplation into sleep, we carry with us the understanding that rest is not an escape from life, but an essential component of living fully and well. The gentle sounds of the fire, the comfortable warmth that surrounds us, and the peaceful completion of our exploration into medieval food wisdom all combine to create the perfect environment for releasing the day's activities and opening ourselves to the mysterious and essential process of sleep that will restore our bodies, integrate our experiences, and prepare us for whatever adventures tomorrow may bring. The embers of our fire now glow with the softest, most peaceful light, providing just enough warmth to maintain perfect comfort as we complete our journey from active exploration into the deep, restorative sleep that has been calling to us throughout this evening of contemplation and discovery. The gentle, rhythmic settling of the remaining coals creates a natural lullaby that seems designed to guide us into the profound rest that awaits. Our exploration of medieval food culture has brought us full circle from the bustling energy of marketplaces and kitchens to this moment of perfect peace and readiness for sleep. Like the medieval household, settling into night after a day of productive work, we too are ready to release the activities of consciousness and surrender to the mysterious process of sleep that restores, heals, and renews both body and spirit. The wisdom we've gathered about the medieval understanding of nourishment as encompassing far more than simple nutrition settles into our deeper awareness, like the satisfying feeling that follows a perfect meal. The insights about community, gratitude, seasonal rhythms, and the integration of pleasure with purpose become part of our inner landscape, enriching our understanding of what it means to live well and eat mindfully. The medieval appreciation for the cycles of activity and rest that characterize healthy life offers us permission to fully embrace this transition into sleep as a natural and necessary part of our daily rhythm. Just as medieval people understood that periods of rest were essential for both physical health and spiritual well being, we too can approach sleep as an active practice of self care rather than simply the absence of wakefulness. The gentle warmth from our fire creates the perfect environment for the gradual relaxation of both body and mind that precedes deep sleep. As medieval people gathered around their hearths in the evening, sharing the day's experiences and preparing for rest. We too benefit from this ancient human practice of using warmth, light, and peaceful surroundings to support the transition from day consciousness to the restorative state of sleep. Our breathing naturally slows and deepens as we settle more completely into our comfortable resting place. The rhythm of our breath begins to match the gentle, peaceful rhythm of the glowing embers, creating a harmony between our internal processes and the external environment that supports deep relaxation and peaceful sleep. The weight of our bodies settles more completely with each breath as tension releases from muscles that have carried us through the day's activities, starting from the top of our head and moving gradually downward. We can feel each part of our body letting go of the need to remain alert and active, preparing instead for the deep rest that allows for healing and renewal. The thoughts and insights from our exploration of medieval food culture begin to quiet and settle, like sediment in a still pond after the activity that stirred it up has ceased. These insights remain available to us, but they no longer require active attention, allowing our minds to move gradually toward the peaceful emptiness that characterizes the transition into sleep. The medieval understanding of sleep as a time when the soul could travel and explore realms beyond ordinary consciousness offers us a framework for approaching our own sleep as an adventure rather than simply an interruption to our waking lives. This understanding invites us to release our attachment to controlling our experience and instead open ourselves to whatever gifts the night may bring. The gentle sounds of our fire, the soft settling of coals, the barely audible whisper of warm air rising, the occasional tiny crack as wood adjusts to the heat, create a natural soundtrack that supports deep relaxation without demanding attention. These sounds become part of the background of our awareness, neither disturbing our rest nor requiring us to focus on them actively. The warmth that surrounds us penetrates gradually deeper into our bodies, releasing tension held in muscles and joints while creating the physical comfort that supports peaceful sleep. This warmth reminds us of the medieval understanding that physical comfort, when available, should be received with gratitude rather than taken for granted. Our eyelids grow naturally heavier as the combination of warmth, comfort, and the completion of our intellectual and emotional exploration creates ideal conditions for sleep. The soft glow from the embers provides just enough light to maintain a sense of security and comfort without being bright enough to stimulate continued wakefulness. The medieval practice of ending the day with gratitude offers us a perfect way to complete our conscious experience and prepare for sleep. We can feel grateful for the warmth and comfort that surround us, for the fascinating journey we've taken through medieval food culture, for the wisdom we've gathered, and for the approaching gift of restorative sleep. As consciousness begins to fade naturally and peacefully, we can trust in the same biological processes that have sustained humans for millennia, the same need for rest and renewal that characterized medieval life, and the same capacity for restoration that sleep has always provided. Our bodies know how to sleep, our minds know how to rest, and our spirits know how to renew themselves through the mysterious process that connects us to the deepest sources of healing and wisdom. The fire beside us settles into its quietest state, glowing gently but making almost no sound, creating perfect conditions for the final transition into deep sleep. The warmth continues to embrace us, while our awareness gradually releases its hold on external experience and begins the inward journey that characterizes the movement into sleep. The rhythms of our breathing and heartbeat slow to their most peaceful pace as our bodies shift into the repair and renewal mode that characterizes healthy sleep. The insights and experiences from our exploration of medieval food culture become part of the material that our sleeping minds will process and integrate, enriching our understanding in ways that occur below the threshold of consciousness, like the medieval household settling into the quiet hours of night, trusting in the banked fire to maintain warmth until morning, and in the coming dawn to bring new opportunities for work and nourishment. We too can trust in the natural processes of rest and renewal to restore us for whatever tomorrow may bring. The gentle glow of our fire provides the perfect nightlight for our journey into sleep, warm enough to maintain comfort, dim enough to support rest, and steady enough to create a sense of security and peace. As consciousness fades and sleep approaches, this gentle light becomes a bridge between waking and sleeping, between the active exploration of the evening and the passive restoration of the night. Our last conscious awareness settles on the perfect peace of this moment, the ideal temperature, the comfortable support of our resting place, the gentle sounds and soft light of our fire, and the satisfying completion of our journey through medieval food wisdom. With this awareness comes the natural release into sleep, trusting in the ancient human capacity for rest and renewal that has sustained our species through countless generations. The fire glows on quietly through the night, maintaining its gentle warmth while we sleep, just as the fires in medieval households provided comfort and security through the dark hours. In sleep, we join the eternal human experience of rest and renewal, participating in the same biological and spiritual processes that have restored and healed humans since the beginning of our time on earth. Sleep comes naturally and peacefully, welcomed rather than resisted, embraced as the perfect conclusion to our evening of exploration and the ideal preparation for whatever adventures tomorrow may bring. In this sleep, we are connected to all humans who have ever sought rest by firelight, who have ever found comfort in warmth and peace, and who have ever trusted in the natural rhythms of activity and rest that characterize life well lived. Sweet dreams, peaceful rest, and gentle renewal through the quiet hours of night. As sleep approaches and consciousness gently fades, deeper truths about medieval food culture continue to emerge from the warm glow of our dying fire. These final reflections settle into our awareness like the last notes of a beautiful melody, enriching our understanding of the profound wisdom embedded in centuries of human food traditions. The medieval understanding of food as a bridge between the material and spiritual worlds reveals sophisticated insights into the nature of nourishment that extends far beyond simple physical sustenance. Every meal was understood to be an opportunity for communion with the natural world that provided the ingredients, with the community that shared the food and with the divine source that made all abundance possible. The seasonal rhythms that governed medieval eating created natural cycles of anticipation and fulfillment that enhanced the pleasure and meaning derived from food. The long months of winter, sustained by preserved foods and root vegetables, made the first fresh greens of spring extraordinarily precious. Summer's abundance was appreciated not just for its immediate pleasure, but for the security it provided through careful preservation for the coming winter. The medieval craft guilds that governed food production and distribution created systems of quality control and professional development that ensured high standards while transmitting cultural knowledge from one generation to the next. Master bakers, brewers, and other food artisans developed their skills through years of apprenticeship that created deep, embodied knowledge of their materials and methods. The role of pilgrimage in medieval food culture created opportunities for culinary exchange and innovation that enriched local food traditions with influences from distant places. Pilgrims carried recipes, techniques, and ingredients along the great routes that connected communities across Europe and beyond, creating a slow but steady flow of culinary knowledge that enhanced local food cultures without overwhelming them. The medieval understanding of the connection between food and place created strong regional identities that were expressed through distinctive local dishes, ingredients, and preparation methods. These regional differences were celebrated rather than homogenized, creating a rich tapestry of food cultures that reflected the unique characteristics of different landscapes, climates, and communities. The practice of food blessing and consecration in medieval times created frameworks for approaching eating as a sacred activity rather than simply a biological necessity. These practices acknowledged that food was never just fuel for the body, but always carried meanings, relationships, and connections to larger sources of life and abundance. The medieval approach to teaching children about food emphasized hands on participation rather than abstract instruction. Children learned to cook, preserve food, and understand seasonal rhythms through daily involvement in household food activities, creating deep, intuitive knowledge that served them throughout their lives. The integration of food with healing in medieval times created holistic approaches to health that recognized the profound connections between what we eat and how we feel, think, and function in the world. This understanding led to sophisticated systems of dietary therapy that used food as medicine in ways that modern science is only beginning to rediscover and validate. The medieval appreciation for the work involved in food production created relationships with eating that were grounded in reality and gratitude rather than fantasy and entitlement. People who participated in growing, harvesting, and preparing their food developed deep appreciation for the miracle of nourishment that enhanced both the pleasure and nutrition they derived from eating. The social rituals surrounding medieval feasts created opportunities for community building and cultural expression that enriched the eating experience far beyond simple nutrition. These elaborate celebrations served multiple functions, reinforcing social bonds, displaying cultural values, creating shared memories, and acknowledging the abundance that made such celebrations possible. The medieval understanding of moderation as a virtue that enhanced rather than restricted pleasure reveals sophisticated wisdom about sustainable approaches to eating and enjoyment. The practice of alternating abundance with restraint created appreciation and anticipation that made special foods truly special, while maintaining health and avoiding the problems associated with constant overindulgence. The preservation techniques developed in medieval times represent profound creativity in working with natural processes to extend abundance through periods of scarcity. These methods required patience, skill, and understanding of the subtle processes of fermentation, drying, and chemical transformation that could convert fresh foods into preserved forms that were often more complex and interesting than their fresh counterparts. The medieval marketplace, with all its apparent chaos and commercial focus, served as a gathering place where the exchange of food was embedded in webs of social relationship that created community and cultural continuity. The haggling over prices, the evaluation of quality, and the sharing of information about sources and preparation methods all contributed to a food culture that was deeply social and participatory. The evening rituals that marked the end of each day's food activities created natural transitions between the active engagement of daily life and the receptive state that allows for deep rest and renewal. These rituals might include cleaning and organizing the kitchen, preparing foods for the next day, or sharing simple evening meals that provided comfort and closure to the day's activities. As consciousness continues to fade and sleep approaches more closely, these deeper truths about medieval food wisdom settle into our awareness, where they can continue to enrich our understanding and inspire our own relationships with food, eating, and the communities that sustain us. The warm glow of our fire provides the perfect backdrop for this final integration of knowledge and wisdom that will accompany us into sleep and beyond.